Hello. Good morning. We played about 220 hands. Have about 25 to review, but probably not going to get through all of them. I have to be out of here in about an hour, so a little less. So we'll do sort of review today. Um, Same intentions. I plan on building out some more kind of broader intentions based on the CPS stuff that I'm doing. I think I talked about that on Friday or Saturday. We have to we got to, as we learn, we want to bring the new knowledge or the revised knowledge or the remembered knowledge to the table in some sort of orderly fashion. Right now, I've been focusing on world favorability of runouts relative to composition of ranges, and we certainly could sit on that for many sessions to try and get our heads around where our combo sits in a range and what that part of the portion of the range wants to do on a particular board relative to previous actions. Um, but I want to also start bringing in some of the other ideas and CPS, theory, um, their take on the theory of poker, just to try and get a little deeper so we can try and carve out a little bit more EV in the spots that we have it, places where we can execute some exploits to gain some EV from bad play from opponents, places to minimize our bad plays, so we're going to transfer EV to them, and all with the eye towards building this little nest egg as we do a session that allows us to then not end up down. I mean, we will end up down, but to minimize our losses when we get coolered or we end up in flips that we don't win and those sorts of spots, right? So we want to, it's all about gaining that extra EV because the thought would be that over time the flips will even out and over time the coolers will probably even out as well, although not as maybe not as well. Yeah, probably coolers wise, but all of the money we win in poker is in that space where they're making a mistake and we are capitalizing on it. Not just playing a nice base game that then just transfers that EV because of mistakes, but also adds to the EV that we gain by recognizing the mistakes and capitalizing on them. So session was pretty good. I think we won a buy-in, I believe, at least a buy-in, and most of that was due to aces in with ace versus ace king, and I also got a half stack in with another aces. So aces paid off for us as it should, and held, which is nice. Not always the case. And then everything else, I think there were a couple of spots where I was maybe a little thin and possibly bleeding out a bit there. So we'll just see as we go. So this Jack 8 is going to be checked around us. I intend, but didn't in this particular case because I just started the session, to raise all of these kinds of hands. I don't want to be in any checked pots anymore in the big blind. I just want to pressure them with their limps and get them to define a range for me because it's too difficult for me. Let's say it's not too difficult. It's an unstudied spot for me to be playing limped small blinds in the big blind. So at the moment, I want to see either raise or fold or call. Just I want to get a definition of what it is these people are limping, especially when I have no stats on them, and I don't have any idea of how bad they are or good. In the future, we'll certainly start studying the limped small blinds so that we can understand what to do when we do it and understand what we do when we face it. But right now, I'm playing a raise or fold from the small blind versus big blind, and I'm going to force my opponents to do the same. And with my trash hands, I want those folds even more. So At the moment, I don't see any value until I understand a small blind limp range better to be playing trash hands. Well, I guess I'm in position, so maybe that gives me a tiny bit more incentive to play it. Anyway, this is the thought. Maybe after a few sessions, I will discover that that was a bad idea. That I'm just bloating pots with crap. And but I'm certainly going to be raising a lot of my value more so. And if I'm raising a lot of value, then I have to counter it with some bluffs. And stuff like this is just so grimy that it can get lots of good folds from better jacks, queens, king even. So anyway, we see the flop nothing, get check two. Ace comes. I don't see any. I was gonna say I don't see any value in repping an ace, but I certainly could. I would imagine, again, not understanding the ranges at all. I would imagine I'm gonna have some portion more aces checked than I would using them to raise every time, and when I play checks, I got to protect that checking range with an ace and a few aces, and they will potentially, I think, raise versus limp. But again, the counter, of course, is that they also limp some of their aces. So this may or may not be a good bet, and we get a fold. It's a formation I just don't understand well enough to play and to speak to, but let's put it on the list. It's been on the list for a while to start working on some blind versus blind play, and the time might be coming soon. Queen six, so we get a whole bunch of calls, and I sort of decided this hand was probably better to just call with. Certainly could see squeezing and bluff balance our raising range. Sort of the kind of the combos we want to use, big card, small card, to use as bluffs as opposed to two big cards. And when it's very like we need to see an ace or a king heart if a flush draw comes, and a queen, and it just hurts against so many players. So I think maybe the squeeze here probably is a better way to go. I just ended up calling, and I think I got myself into trouble because of that. So we do hit a top pair with a backdoor, and we're going to check it and see what these other people do. We get a half pot bet, two folds. We certainly aren't folding with top pair. There's no, I guess there's probably raises, but the bet size is getting a little bigger, and maybe if they were a third or a quarter pot, maybe then I would bet it. I know, having studied a little bit of multi-way, the bet size is a little high, and the pre-flop raiser a lot of times on a board like this is going to check. So they are indicating strength if they know what they're doing, or they just don't know what they're doing, maybe, against three other players. So I don't see a lot of value in raising. More times than not, they're going to have a queen or overpair, or set of jacks, or set of queens even, like unlikely to set of queens. But would a 9 bet off half pot? Would nines, tens, eights? Probably not, right? So, and those are hands that if we raise will fold. We're trying to get value from those hands. We don't want to fold them. We don't want to just get called from better. So the raise here seems very counterintuitive. And the 8 comes, which this board, I think, world favorability wise, is probably more favorable to me. I have a good portion of 9 tens. They probably have some as well, but we have called around the queen jack 10-9. we have a pretty condensed range, I think, against that mid-sized bet. If they go again, size dependent, we will continue. Again, I don't see any value in raising this particular combo. The only thing we start to fold out would be like a king 10 or queen 10, maybe the rough queen 9 that was sort of putting money in, thinking they were ahead. No two pairs are going to fold. I think the threshold for sort of thin value into bluff range would probably be something with a 10 in it, something with a 9 in it, to block the straight. For sure, spade flush draws would help. We'd rather have that than a spade than a heart. Maybe then we could see raising, so that if we get called by ace queen or king queen, we still have a lot of outs to river them. And yeah, so I think things that are around the straight, which our hand is not, queen 9, I don't think any queen, but jacks, maybe jack 9, jack 10, and 7 suited maybe. Something like that makes more sense to me to be using as a raising hand. I think we're still bluff catching, and their bluffs are going to be 10-9, which come in, ace king, which is looking for a gut shot, and ace 10 and king 10. So we are actually beating some bluffs still. We're really not beating a lot of value. Maybe a small bet from a jack is possible. Unlikely to have a worse queen. Super unlikely they have a worse queen, especially a 17 repip, but that is only 7 hands. So that's the thought process. They do downsize a little bit, so I think we get the price to call as a bluff catch and see what comes on the river. Another straightening card comes. None of the backdoors arrive color-wise, and I don't see any point in leading. We made the straight on the turn, and we'd have to go fairly big. It would be. It just feels. I don't know whether they would buy the story, right? Like even if we had something like, say king 10 maybe, or jack 9 or something. 10, yeah, 10, jack 10 maybe, or because blocking sets of 10 or jacks. So it's an interesting question, actually. I would say that this probably would be worth trying to figure out, but unfortunately we won't get a solve on it because of those two players in that saw the flop. So the solver won't be able to create anything for us that's useful. So I think we're still checking, and we're then looking at what the bet size is going to be here. Getting a pretty good price, but it seems very kind of thin value, like king queen, maybe ace queen, like very worried about straights, very board aware, and their bluff composition, which is such small bet, is going to be quite low. And I see myself as having, I think, better bluff catchers like queen 10, jack 10, anything around the straight. We block value, granted, so it's unlikely it's less likely they have a queen or an ace queen or a king queen, but it's still certainly possible, of course. I struggled over this fold, which I did in the end. Getting such a good price, probably should just keep them honest. Ace king has missed their draw, but ace king, king 10, and ace 10 are all bluff catchers. We're all bluffing, or we're catching against those. They're in position. They may see themselves as having some showdown value potentially, although on this board likely not, especially with our heavily densely imposed range. Which then sort of puts me back into the mind of, if we're so heavily condensed, should we not be leading the board maybe? I think if we're sitting in the wrong combos to do that still. So yeah, that's a long ramble that I don't know whether this decision was right or not. It's very good. We probably should be calling. But they are really strong on the flop when they bet half pot into 3 people. So they could very easily have queens, they could have jacks, they could have ace queen, they have king queen, a lot of cards that are aces, kings still. Like tons of really good hands from a tight range that I'm just gonna say we're indifferent if anything, and the fold is easily in the realm, which is what I did. King jack. Actually, you know what? Let's give this a okay and a review, because this is one I might actually post. That previous hand was nothing. King jack will raise to the limper. We get called, and they call. So we're 3-way with an ace on board, middle monkey in the middle, checking it. 3 comes. Better not for our range. If anything, strengthens theirs a little bit, although this is a 67 VPIP who limped open. So not a strong hand, not a strong player, but this one is a little stronger. One would assume this guy probably with an ace would bet. So, but 3 doesn't help us, and it would help this guy possibly if he's opening that wide all the time, and probably not much for this guy. So if we see a bet from this guy, we're probably buying it, and probably a face-up player. But he checks, I check, and they bet. We bet half a pot. He folds, and I don't see any continuation here. They have lots of aces, suited aces. Let's see, they don't go to showdown very often. One saw the flop. It's not particularly high. Yeah, like what are we hoping for? Even if a king comes and we check and they bet again, we're just in that much trouble. More trouble. Jack comes, same deal, right? Like we're kind of in this bluff catchy mode that the combo isn't all that wonderful for this run out. And I think with the ace on board, we just give them credit for having it and let it go. So I'm going to call that a good. Again, can't check it on a solver because there's 3-way. So we raise from the small blind, we get called, ace comes. My cards are looking for a double backdoor and kind of janky. Let's just say we rep an ace more often, so we'll bet, and they call, so it condenses them quite strongly, especially around this. So now we're going to check, and when they bet, we can fold. I think that's a fine hand. And just because we haven't done any solvers so far, let's do one. Ooh, big loss today. What mistake did we make that would cause that? First thing, let's look at this hand. Jack off. Yeah, so we're good. Nothing really to talk about there, I don't think. Some turns we do bet. Continue, but they're all basically the same, and then we'll just fold to the bigger bet. Now I'm curious what we had. that caused us to have such a bad loss? This could be a hand that we'll look at. Let's just see. Lost some big blinds. 17, it must be this one. Huge blunder. The ace queen. Checking the river there. Now we lost a lot of value by checking the river. Okay, that is a hand we'll look at. So we can talk about that one when we get there. Ace 10 will be an open. We get called from the button. We have an ace. This is on the borderline of my check. If ace 9, I probably would check. Ace jack, I'll bet. Ace king's pretty good for us. It's a pretty good board. And we get lots of calls from kings. In this particular portion of my aces, I decide to check, let them bet. I'll call it. 7 comes, not great for us, better for them. Ace 7. We have some 7s, we have some 8s. We check the 7s. We would check the 8s, of course. We would certainly check 8-7 and call it. So 8's the 2 pair and sets are in our range, but we have the better ace and king sets. We also have ace king that they don't have. So I think overall our range is more netted. We could certainly bet bigger. We could certainly check raise previous, but then kings will fold. I think we continue checking with this middle of our range value and calling, but then when they don't bet and the jack comes, straight has come in. King 10, which is theirs for sure. Now we do have queen 10. I think we can rep strong value, and we can rep it. I'm sort of trying not to bet these smaller bets on the river, although I am out of position. So I probably actually would have been wiser to go smaller here, because we are a little less likely than them to have queen 10, although, yeah, and they would bet we call, so they could certainly have gotten there with queen 10. We could certainly have gotten there with queen 10. I think I probably maybe c-bet queen 10 more often than I would one of these sort of middle aces. We have a 10, switch v block, but yeah, I think in retrospect now this size is probably wrong. We should go smaller to get calls from kings and jacks and all these kinds of middling hands, and we're just lining ourselves to get in trouble if they do end up having slow played us with sets 8s or 7s, and or the queen 10. So, but we end up getting a fold. Let's just see. Ace 10 off. Ace 10 off. Guessing. Is that the one? Yeah. So this was a mistake hand as well. Blunder. Ace 10. Doesn't like a check on the flop. Kind of okay with it. I think it's fine. And then this is where we made the sizing error there. Pretty big sizing error. Almost 0.64 size error. So that's cool. We recognize the mistake, which is great. Recognized mistake with betting big from OOP. I have one size generally, IP, and that's big, but OOP less so, mostly small to get raised and calls from worse. So that was just a fundamental error and not being position aware. King queen will open, get raised. It's just a shitty tiny little raise. So we could certainly re-raise squeeze versus this odd call from big blind. But and I kind of would prefer not to be monkey in the middle with king queen off. But I elected for just a call. It's a very cheap price. Kind of get nothing, and then checks, 10s. I mean, we have lots of 10s, of course, but so do they. I think this is nutwise shared across the board. I don't know. I think our ranges are kind of our range maybe we raised and called versus a small re-raise with a half stock bad player. They have bet, they call. When they call them out, there's no point in continuing. We don't really have any draws, and king or queen coming doesn't really help us at all, especially if it's a heart or a club king. So easy fold. Interesting to see how it plays out. Nines, king queen. Oh, they had king queen. Okay, so they had more courage than I did. Maybe I should have bet. Maybe I could bet the turn. Maybe we missed a bet on turn. We have as many 10x as they do. Maybe more than PFR. Flop should possibly repop versus going to flop. Multi-way play, man. Tricky. We're in the blinds, so now we do a raise. They re-raise. Interesting. So limp re-raise. Just don't have the stats on the person to know whether they're playing a limp, proper limp range. And then when they bet, and we just have nothing but overs, and two of those overs are dirty with the club draw, I see no point in continuing with this particular hand. Don't really see any point in raising, especially as they've shown strength. So we'd be in theory betting into a somewhat polar range, although on the flop they probably continue with over pairs. But maybe not. On a paired board, they could think this guy has a 4, but we read this 3-bet ranges. Neither one of us likely has a 4. They probably just have bigger overcards. Undoubted that we could get a fold. We could maybe have said a7 or 8-7 that we raise possibly. It's a bluff. Mostly calling that. I guess ace-4 would have been a raise. We could have 4s there. And we would certainly check 4s on the flop some portion of the time. I think we just gotta let it go. I don't know. Again, this I don't. Oh, the solver will help us here. It has a limp range for small blind. I guess more than anything, I'm interested in what do we want to. Do we have any raises here? And no, we don't. But we do have bets. Slightly better to bet a small amount. Curious what the raises are here. It's kind of across the range, really. Around the 4s. That's 6-5 is a straight. Most of the worst raises are coming from things that block the 4s. Top end of the straight draw. Pieces of the straight draw. It's 9. Probably with club redraws. Yeah, that's where all the EV in that node or that collection of combos is. Jack 10 got shot. We're just mostly calling even with the clubs. Yeah, we just don't have a ton of raises. Well, actually 15% worth of. Ace 5 around the 4s, King 5 around the 4s, King 6, clubs probably. Another call. Yeah, there's some raises there. Right. And then here, facing the check, we actually do have quite a few bets. 40 and lots of them here. So keeping note of that in the future, we probably want to try and bet out on this particular board, even though we 3-bet, hey? They limped, we 3-bet. Yeah, I guess it's because of that limp. If they had raised and we 3-bet, then the ranges would be a lot tighter. But because they're still somewhat wide, we can put we can rep a certain amount of coordination here. Assuming we're doing a raise with 5-4, 6-5, 8-6, 7-6, for sure raising those. It's trickier to think of myself raising limps with those, but good to know. Again, a formation I don't really understand that well. Limp small blind. So lessons to be learned in the future. Let's give this an okay. Ace-8. Call, kind of tight range. Block big aces. Possibly worth putting in a 3-bet here, but pretty darn good hand that if we get 4-bet, we'll feel a little kind of shitty about having to fold. So I think it's fine. Let's, concentrating those 3-bets around Queen 6-5-4, Jack 6-5-4, Jack 7, those sorts of things, because they get lots of folds from all kinds of things. Whereas the Ace-8 really has a narrow fold threshold. Hit an 8. I think we're showdown bound. Don't see much value. They definitely have a good portion of this board. So do we. Maybe we could put in a small bet since our range is probably pretty good, but we did check. So we got a full calling range now. And yeah, I would say maybe let's do it when we have some diamond draws, or I mean, ace could help us for sure, but it could also help them quite a bit. Check again. We check to look for showdown and expect to see pocket sixes. Oh, ace 5. So we might have been able to get one bet out of him. Okay. A little passive. A little passive versus average range. All their value would likely bet flop. See bet flop. Might be able to get some value from 5x and 6s, 7s, but and draws, but it's thin. So I'm curious though, let's just look at the solve and see if we have gained an advantage here on that card, and their bet, and their check. No, it's looking like it just once. Yeah, it's just pure checks. There's no bets in there. Turn. What's that strategy look like? We're in the big blind. So the turn strategy is got any leads? Yeah, it's got a lot of polar leads though. So as we have a bunch of hands by that point that do want to get some money in, ace-8 is not one of them. Ace-9 is though, because it's around that board. It's got a straight potential. Ace-10 is not. Ace-Jack is. Ace queen is smaller size though. King jack was, yeah, open-ended. King 9 is open-ended. Jack 9 is the nuts. But only, yeah, it's got the most EV, right? It's low small pot. So fine for our combo, but taking into account there are a lot of big bets on this board. So we would polarize this position on this particular card, and we would use the small pairs, it looks like. And yeah, small pairs, the undercard, the draws, all the diamond draws, and diamond draws, diamond draws, diamond draws. Some big overcards, yeah, straights, straights. 9-5. Any of the fives look like they're usable as bluffs. But the size, like big ass sizes, right? Overbets pretty well. Just a tiny sliver of small bets, mostly overbets. The value is the same deal. Yeah, pretty well all big bets. So super polar turn when we've hit, but this particular combo is not. So give this a good. This is a super polar turn, so, and our holding is in mid-range, range, lots of straight draw, flush draw, and 5x hands to bluff with. Not getting much value. From this combo. This, from this portion of range. Okay, so we're fine. That was good. Threes, this is kind of a fun hand. Called from the big blind. I think our range, strong range advantage here, so we're going to bet. We bet half pot because our range is so strong and we're so nutted. So I decide that the threes can be a good bluff because they'll unblock a bunch of middle pairs, and they'll unblock really just the middle pairs. Having said that, they also do coordinate quite well with a calling range with this board. So this feels enthusiastic. There's basically 10s through 5s, which is what we're looking for, but there's all kinds of jacks and queens and kings that they can have here. So the point of that would be, what would be our best bluffs, right? Ace backdoor flushes obviously are really good bluffs, but 3s and 2s, 4s even, are just so weak and have they even improved on this particular board. I don't see them ever, even as a set of 3s, are super happy about continuing to get money into the pot, right? They're so far from being unnutted. And even a jack or a queen on the river with a 3 turn, we're still not feeling super smoking awesome about having turned a set. So I think using it as part of our bluffs is probably okay, just because king, jack, queen, X are too good value to be bluffing with, and even 10s, 9s, 8s, 7s I think are still slightly too good value to be bluffing with against their ace-X backdoors and draws. So that would be my argument for why this is a good bet. We get called, so they're condensing around. The 6 I don't think helps us in the least. It doesn't bring any straights in. It doesn't really do anything for them other than like weird two pairs, king 6, queen 6. Jack 6 are probably there suited wise. So I think it's a one and done bluff. I don't see much point in continuing to polarize. Having said that, what would be those hands that would polar? Ace spades maybe, jack spades, queen spades maybe would have like a lot of my range is betting on the flop. So like queen spades, jack spades, all the king X, all of those hands are going to bet, I think, because this board is so good for us. So we have a whole lot of spade combos that can pick up the bluffing slack now. Even jack 10, 10 nines a straight, 9-8 spades maybe. If we're really like range betting for a big size because we believe we're so strong, then there is lots of other hands to bluff with. And I think at this point we just want to give up. I think if we're also betting these, we're so there you go. Probably not the best strategy, and we get raised and we fold with our tail between our legs. So I'm gonna call this a blunder. So I just talked myself into a check this turn. Too many bluffs, too many good drawing hands to pull from, to bluff from. So using this combo. Of course, their bet here is just insane. So they're probably two pairs, I guess. Maybe flop straights. I doubt they have flop to set. Maybe they got sixes there. I don't know. I mean, what are you raising into polar bets on that board with? Are you fucking ass-nutted hands, I guess. So yeah, we were fine on the flop. Let's look at the strategy of this. Let's see if we're reading this properly. If we're as good on that flop as we think. Yes. So we are excellent. We bet everything with these two sizes, including threes. Basically everything gets to the turn. And then we need to start polarizing. Yes. And the threes do polar, interestingly enough. Which ones? The ones with spades. We have a spade? We do. So this combo is being used to bluff at some frequency. The problem is our size. We wanted to overbet the size if we're going to bluff with it. And that's where the issue comes in. It's me using the B75s. I've said that before. I'm going to put it on my intentions list right now. Intentions must start using B125 and overbets on turns rather than relying on B75. B75 we can have all the time. We can certainly have B75s, but those are good for kind of the stand-in thin value. We're in position, we should be polarizing, especially on the board that we have. That smaller bet does kind of create this incentive, this raise incentive. So what is it that they are raising? Straights that they slow played and nothing else. Basically straights. So they called with 10-9 or they called with ace-10 suited. Possibly. They should not be raising many of their two pairs. Looks like they raised these with a flush draw. And then a whole lot of bluffs. Not a whole lot, but some portion of bluffs. Weak hands. Queen X, Jack X. Are they finding these or are they just calling? Tens? Do they know to bluff tens? It's basically pretty well it, right? Like nothing else is bluffing. Everything else is Falling. Weak hands. Equity. N8-10-7. Those, are they good enough to bluff those? I don't know. What's their stats? A little wide. Possibly. I guess flush draws, but even there, we polared, so they just want to call. Oh, here's some of their flush draws. So yeah, other flush draws, backdoors that are coming in, they could use those as bluffs as well. Yeah, for sure. So facing the half, I don't see threes in any world calling. Nope. So we're good. So in actual fact, not a blunder. Let's just put it as a, I mean, according to solver. Having said that, solver does use the 3-spade 3x combos at some portion of the time to bluff, but it's marginal and mixes with checks. Mixes with checks. Of course, we fold. Raise, no problem. And mostly, I think we tend toward one and done with this combo class. So I've given myself an inaccuracy. I bumped it up one. Okay, we're going to do a couple more hands and I'm going to bail today. We defend again, similar to that situation earlier with the queen six, I think it was. We decided to just defend versus squeeze. Slightly stronger hand. More nutted when the flush comes or we get a flush draw to invest in. I think that queen probably wants to be used as a squeeze. More so, ace X's are unlikely to fold to squeezes. So the only place we really get any fold equity from against 4 players would be maybe crummy pocket pairs that are looking to set mine, and just a bunch of other stuff that's worse. So we do hit a king. So it's, again, similar spot. Check it around. We're 4-way. Now the flush does come in, so I think we go into calling mode with the 2 pair and a straight on board. Nothing. Now I think we can invest a little bit, even though the board is pretty janky and our pair has now been duplicated. But I don't know. Probably should just check there too. I mean, it's just, I think probably just check river, duplicated, 2 pair. There are tons of better value that would be checking this board, although I wouldn't expect many houses, because I don't think sets don't check flop. And maybe not many better king X, although flush on turn probably incentivizes them from betting, but they potentially will bet. Also, B50 blows. Get rid of it. Small. Is that what I used? B50? Oh, I didn't. Okay, never mind. So I've been trying to stop these B50s. Bluffy B50s. Bluff 50. We don't use those anymore. So we just bet small, which is fine. We took a pot, which who knows if we were the better hand or not. We probably were. But unlikely get folds or calls from anything worse. Top pair with a beautiful flush draw, straight on board. We certainly are going to bet it. Bet for about 3 big blinds. Get a call, and then when the flush turn comes, I think we can polar here. So we do, and we get a fold. I just want to make sure that that's not different from that this solution, the king, queen, jack. We got king 9. King 9. I don't think if we get raised with that against that bet, we're unlikely to. Yeah, it's actually a check. There you go. We're strong, but not so strong that we want to polar. It's not a huge EV loss, but it's slight. I want to do that ace queen hand. Let's do that, and that'll be our last hand. We have. What does this composition look like? So this particular king does not really want to put a lot of money in. These other kings are more happy to do it. King. Where are the king clubs? King. What am I missing here? Check. Check. All the king. Oh, there they are. So where is these king clubs? Well, they. No. Why? What am I missing? I'm missing something obvious. We open, raise from the cutoff. All our kings. They call. King, jack. Oh, king. Yeah, of course, because the jack's on the board. Jack's on the board, 10's on the board. So yes. So these bigger club draws do bet. Everything's betting. So we are betting range, and we are betting for a good size, and we get called. And now here's the question. Do any of these other 46, they have the B75s and the king 9 is just slightly worse for doing that action. The lower kings all don't do it. So that's a cusp hand there. The king 9 does not want to invest anymore, or doesn't want to risk being check raised. I think we certainly will. Obviously, we'll call a bet. There's no denying that. All the kings are probably calling bets. Yeah, of course. And it doesn't raise either. But when we're checked to, that's a cusp hand to polarize with, or to be using as a polar hand. Just not quite there to be going for it. And it's checking out fabulous checking range. So let's just make this inaccuracy maybe. Turn. This is a cusp top pair with flush draw hand, king queen, clubs is betting polar. Everything lower is protecting a strong check range. So that's fine. You know, it's probably even an okay. We were just off the line with the king 9 that doesn't need to polarize. Can be a good protection hand. So all good. Not a terrible play, but we understand why. Need to protect checking ranges. Let's find that ace queen. There it is. Okay, so we're in the big blind and we re-raise and they call. We get a top pair queen. We go half pot, which I think is fine. They call. They check. We go 2/3. They call. So we have a ton of queens. We have slow played sets and 3x. So this was our big loss for today. Should we be betting more? I remember thinking at the time, probably should, decided to not, but king, queen, 10, queen 9, well, 2-pair queen, queen 10, queen jack are all going to give us calls, and I wonder what the right size here is. Do we polar? Queen jack suited. This was the big mistake. Yes, we polar all in against jacks. So there you go. We I doubt in the wild jacks are going to call an all in, but maybe on this run out they're going to bluff catch against tons of missed flush draws and worse. And we just don't even have this. Let's see, checks top pair, don't have any checks of top pair. Like the very worst queen, yeah, queen jack and queen 10 are the ones that we're trying to get calls from. So the fact that we have them block them, all the other queens that we have by this point are putting it in. And then queen 6. So that was the big blunder of the day there, and goes to our river issues with getting value. So this is the blunder. River, need to put it in against strongly condensed range for less than pot, and we'll get called by lots worse. Best hands likely raised flop or turn, and sometimes we run into it, but over time that last portion of their stack should be ours. River issue with extracting both values and bluffs. Or stacks. Right? I think that was the worst of all of the hands in that review. Let's just see if there's anything else that is worth putting up there. Yeah, that's the main one. That blender we already talked about. That was the ace 10. And then this blunder seems like a kind of a mean thing to say for a 0.09 EV loss. Check rather than this bet on the river, which we didn't actually. Oh, that was that hand right at the beginning. That's considered a blunder. Oh, because of the EV loss. EV is so low because of the pot size. Percentage of pot, that's what matters. Let's look at that. Right. That's how we get more blunders, is based on that percentage of pot. So sort of that more often. 4, 10 we talked about. Jack 8, yeah. All right. But that was the biggest blunder of the day and put our score at a very bad, almost 10 in big blind loss. So we'll close on that. It's a good lesson. At some point, I will become a better river player. Right now I continue to make errors like that where I just get too cautious. I talk myself into I'm being slow played, and I need to understand it's a small blind versus big blind issue too, like not understanding that node or that formation well enough. When we start studying that, I'll hopefully start taking in a little bit more of that lesson. But I wonder why those are all right. Interesting. 0 EV loss, but a 64. What does that mean? Everything is fine. Everything is fine, but I only get scored. He's 64. Huh. I don't know what that is. CTO score percentage. Okay, thanks. We'll do it again soon.